Hey everyone, it's Hannah. I know that I have not been active on this channel for the past couple weeks. I've been super busy, so I'm really sorry about that, and I'm going to try to post more. So today, for this video, I'm going to be doing a video that was actually requested of me, which is to do book recs that are under 400 pages, because I guess I've been reading books and talking about books that have been super long recently, and so people want to read the books that I'm talking about, but they don't want to spend like 3 weeks reading one book, which I totally understand. I have picked my 10 favorite books under 400 pages from off my bookshelf, and I'm going to be talking about those today. So let's get started. So the first book that I'm going to be talking about today is Room by Emma Donoghue. This book is 321 pages. And if you don't know what Room is about, it is about this woman who has been trapped in this like shed behind this man's house for like 5 years. She ends up having this son, and he's about 5 years old, and the story is told from the son's perspective, and they end up getting out of the room, and it's just about like sort of this kid learning how to deal with being in the real world, because he's never been outside of Room before, and so he's kind of learning like all these new things. And also the mom has a significant amount of trauma, and it's about her kind of like working through that while the son sort of figures out how to be in the world. So it's really good. This is an adult book, so, and it's also very very heavy subject matter. If you can't handle books that contain things like kidnapping, sexual assault, suicide, things like that, all of those are prominent in this book, so I think you should avoid it. But other than that, it's a really good novel, and I really enjoyed it, so yeah. Next book I'm going to be talking about, I've talked about before, that is The Martian by Andy Weir, I think his name is. The Martian is about this guy who gets left on Mars accidentally. So he goes to Mars on this expedition, and his crewmates, they're basically caught in the storm, and they think that he has died, and so they have to leave him behind, otherwise they will get stuck on Mars too. And turns out he's actually alive, and so it's all about him trying to get off Mars basically, and survive on Mars. And I recently read Andy Weir's other book, which is Artemis, and I'm going to do a review of that book when I do my like September wrap-up video. But so far this book is definitely my favorite book that he's ever written, and it's honestly one of my favorite books of all time. So if you're really into like science or just sort of like how things work, this book is really good because it talks about that a lot. It's really funny, which I love, and it has sci-fi elements for sure. I mean, obviously you can probably tell from the synopsis that it's sci-fi, but I'm not really into sci-fi that much, and I loved this book. So even if you're not into sci-fi, I highly recommend it. And yeah, so you should definitely read The Martian. It's 369 pages, so it's a little under 400, which is good. The next book I'm going to recommend is actually a nonfiction book. So this is The Glass Castle by Jeanette Walls. I read this book last year, or not last year, this year earlier, at the recommendation of a friend, and she let me borrow it, and I really enjoyed this book. So basically what it's about is it's a true account of Jeanette Walls, the writer, of her family and what it was like for her growing up. And basically the thing about her family is that they moved around a lot because her dad was sort of mistrustful of like the government, and he always thought that people were like following him, and he had all these big ideas and plans, and one of them was to make the Glass Castle, which would be sort of like a mansion that him and his family would live in. And it was a really interesting book. Originally I was like, this book seems kind of horrible and sad, but it was pretty amazing. And especially for a nonfiction book, I find that there are very few like creative nonfiction books, so when I hear about one that's good, I like to read it because I really enjoy creative nonfiction when it's done well. So yeah, this book is 288 pages, really short read, really good, and I highly recommend it, so you should all read that one too. Next book I'm going to recommend is The Light Between Oceans by M.L. Stedman. At least 4 years ago I read this book, and I enjoyed it so much. If you don't like to be spoiled, skip past this part in the video because I am going to talk about the plot, and it's kind of hard to talk about the plot without spoiling it. This man and his wife live on an island where there's a lighthouse just off the coast of Australia, and they are trying to start a family, but the woman can't conceive, basically. Like, she has a few miscarriages, and it's super sad. And it's back in like the early 1900s. I'm not exactly sure when it is. I think maybe like 1920s or something like that. It was around the time of World War I or just after it, I think. So basically they're struggling to conceive and have babies, and every single time she has a miscarriage, I think she ends up having like 4. It's really sad, and it's hard on them, obviously. And then one day this boat washes up on the island, and it is a man who is unfortunately dead and a baby. Baby is alive. And so they end up kind of taking this baby, and they know that the baby probably belongs to someone like who is like missing her somewhere on Australia, like in the town that's nearest to the lighthouse. And they go to this town sort of like periodically when he has like breaks on the lighthouse. And so they end up going into town, and the husband sort of slowly discovers that the woman who this baby actually belongs to is still like grieving her child and is like super upset. And it's kind of this like moral dilemma of like, should we give this baby back to this woman who thinks that her baby is dead, or should we keep it for ourselves because we love this baby and we can't have a baby of our own? So I'm not going to spoil the ending, but it's really good. It's an adult book, and it's about like this crazy moral dilemma that these people are having, and I like books about moral dilemmas, so I really enjoyed it. This book is 343 pages, so pretty short, sweet, and very sad. Yeah. Next book I'm going to recommend is, I think, a middle grade book. I'm not sure, but I read it when I was in like 5th grade, and I've always loved it. It's Stargirl by Jerry Spinelli. I don't know if you can see the cover very well, but when I was growing up, I read this book, and it was like one of my favorite books of all time. I don't really know why. It just sort of had this like magical element, and I just fell in love with it. And I had always loved it, and I recently like repurchased it, and basically, it's like one of my favorite books ever, and it's about, I haven't read it in a long time, but it's about this girl who sort of moves to this new town, and this guy is like in love with her, and her name is Stargirl. She's just a very strange, like weird girl, and we just kind of learn about her through the perspective of this guy who's like totally in love with her. But yeah, it's really good. And it's only 186 pages, and it's meant for like 6th graders, so you can probably read it like within one day. So anyway, I really like that book. I just wanted to recommend it because if you haven't read it, you should read it. Next book I'm going to recommend is The Lovely Bones by Alice Sebold. I think it takes place either in like the 60s or the 70s, so kind of like early, back when people didn't know better and got kidnapped and murdered very often. And this girl, spoiler, ends up getting killed by this neighbor. And so the book tells the story from her perspective, where she's kind of watching what's happening from heaven. And it also talks about like her family, because her sister and her dad, like, instead of getting over her murder, they really want to know who did it, and so they're trying to figure out like who ended up murdering her. And it's like this whole thing. It's very sad, so if you're not into sad books, I don't recommend that you read this novel, but it's good. You will probably notice if you watch, you know, my videos where I talk about books, I enjoy books that are about the concept of heaven, because I think like the afterlife is something obviously none of us really know about. And so when books have sort of an interesting take on heaven, I end up really enjoying them. And this book has that, which I love. And it's also about something that's it's so sad, but it's also so like almost heartwarming, because her family like never gives up on her, which I think is just sort of amazing. Like it really gets you right in the heart. So if you can't handle books that are sad, also obvious trigger warnings, there are triggers for rape, murder, kidnapping, things like that, especially like rape and murder of young girls. So if you can't deal with that, don't read this book. But this book is 328 pages, so it's under 400 pages, pretty short, but it's a more difficult read. It's hard to get through because it's so emotionally like painful, but it's a really good book. Next book I'm going to recommend is also a nonfiction book. It is Everyone Hanging Out Without Me and Other Concerns by Mindy Kaling. So if you don't know who Mindy Kaling is, she's most famous for her role on The Office. She plays Kelly on The Office, and she was one of the writers, so she's a comedian. She is so funny. This book is hilarious. That's why I'm recommending it, because it's so good. I'm really into celebrity like memoirs of their own lives. Like, I really enjoyed Bossy Pants by Tina Fey, Yes Please by Amy Poehler, sort of books like that that are very like funny, where mostly comedians will talk about like their own lives and their experiences. And I love this book. Mindy Kaling talks about growing up, working on The Office, like sort of just her life. And since she's so funny, the book is just hilarious. I've read it a bunch of times and it's like super easy to get through. So it's one of those books where like if I'm having a bad day, I'll just read it, because it's only 216 pages. So if you like books like that, definitely read this one. Alright, next book I'm going to recommend is Water for Elephants by Sarah Gruen. I just talked about this in one of my last videos, which was like my haul, because I had recently picked it up from a bookstore. And I've read it before, but I just bought it because I wanted to own it because I had read it on my Kindle. This book is 335 pages, and it is about this guy who is now like old and he lives in a nursing home. There's sort of two timelines going on. One is when he's old and in a nursing home, and then the other is when he was young and he used to work for this like traveling circus, and so he would sort of like take care of the elephants. And it's kind of, I haven't read it in a while, so I don't exactly remember the whole plot, but it is about, I think he like falls in love with this woman and she has like a husband, and sort of all of this is like going on as he's working for this traveling circus, which is already something kind of like crazy in and of itself. And then in the nursing home, he is sort of just thinking about his memories. It's a really good book, and I don't know if I would call it historical fiction, but it does have those like truthful historical elements. Like back in the early like 1900s, people would go to the circus. Like that was just like something that people did because that was how they got entertained. And it's really good. There's like romance involved and drama, mystery, all this stuff, so I highly recommend it. Next book I'm going to recommend is Sharp Objects by Gillian Flynn. I've already done a review on this book, so I'm not going to talk about it too much, and also I don't want to give it away, but it is now a TV series with Amy Adams, who is amazing, obviously. Gillian Flynn is one of my favorite authors, and I was going to recommend Gone Girl in this video, but Gone Girl is longer than 400 pages, so I can't do that. But this is one of my favorite. Gillian Flynn only has 3 novels, and I think this one is either first or second in my ranking of those novels. It's really good. It's a psychological thriller. Trigger warnings for like self-harm, murder, body horror, gore, stuff like that. So, but obviously it's a psychological thriller, so if you can't handle those very intense elements, I would stay away from it. But besides that, it's really good. Gillian Flynn's writing style is amazing. I think she's one of the best like authors of modern times, basically, so definitely check that out, or one of her other books if you want to also, but this one is one of my favorites, so yeah. Final book I'm going to be talking about is my favorite book of all time, and that is The 5 People You Meet in Heaven by Mitch Albom. The 5 People You Meet in Heaven is about this man who works on this pier by the ocean, and he's super old and he's worked there his whole life, and he ends up dying and going to heaven. There's sort of 2 perspectives in the book. There's the man's life, where things are going on while he's still alive, and then there's what's happening when he's in heaven, and it's like his memories and all this stuff. And like I said about The Lovely Bones, I love books about takes on the afterlife and what happens, and this is like one of my favorite books because I think it's so amazing. So basically the premise of this book is that like when you go to heaven, there are 5 people who have made a huge impact on your life, and they tell you like why they're there, and they sort of teach you like a lesson, and they talk about their lesson in your life specifically, and you get to meet with them and talk to them for as long as you want, and then you go on, I guess. So that's kind of the premise of this book, and I really love it. Like Mindy Kaling's book, this book is only 196 pages, so it's so short that if I'm having a bad day, I can read it all in one day, which I really like. And yeah, it is my favorite book of all time. So if you haven't read it, please read it. So those are my 10 books that I'm recommending that are under 400 pages. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you read any of these books, let me know. Let me know what you think of them. If you liked them too, if you didn't, what you liked about them. And yeah, that's it. So bye guys.